Hello and welcome to the Walking Talking Topic on Averages question number 5 with me, Mr. Barton. Now, question 5 is a lovely question because it starts off nice with a fairly standard 4-marker and then they try and mess you up big time with a beautiful histograms question. So, let's not jump the gun. Let's try and get our 4 marks really carefully, really clearly, because we can't afford to be dropping anything on this kind of question. So we've got 50 people took part in a charity walk. The table shows the group to frequency distribution, that's just a posh way of saying group data, of the amounts of money raised to the nearest pound. Calculate an estimate for the mean amount. As soon as you see calculate an estimate for the mean, you should be thinking group data, I'm going to need a midpoint, I'm going to need a midpoint times frequency, just like we did in question 2. So let's get it sorted. Let's get ourselves a little midpoint. To save time, I'm going to go for MP for midpoint. Midpoint between 10 and 19. Flipping out, that's a bit nasty. A couple of ways of doing this. Some people like to work out the difference in between and halve it and add it on. Or I'm a fan of doing the lower bit plus the higher bit, adding them together and halving it. So I get 10 plus 19, I think is 29, and if I halve 29, I think, if my maths is right, I get 14.5. 20 to 29, well, if we use my technique there, I think that's going to come to 49, and if I halve 49, it's almost 50. Half of 50 is 25, so I think that's going to be 24.5. Now, the good news is those group widths remain the same, so I think I've spotted the pattern here, 34.5 and 44.5 for that one. Now, that's the amount of money they spend, and remember that midpoint is our best estimate for the amount of money that those 2 people spend, and 24.5 is our best estimate for the amount of money those 18 people spend. So for mean, we're going to need total money. So let's get ourselves an extra little column here that's going to be midpoint times by our frequency. So I've got 2 times 14.5. Now, I think I'm alright at doing that one. I think it's going to be 29. But when it comes to doing 18 times 24.5, I'm not so sure I fancy that one. So let's have a look. 18 times 24.5 is 441. Then what have I got? 29 times 34.5, that's going to come to, flipping heck, 2001 over 2. Press my little SD button, that's going to come to 1000.5. And finally, one lot of 44.5 is just going to be 44.5. I'm going to need a grand total of those, so let's add them up. 29 plus 441 plus 1000, make sure you get the right number of zeros, 0.5 plus 44.5. That's going to come to 1,515. Top tip, just bang those in again just to be doubly sure. 44.5 plus 1,000.5 plus 441 plus 29. Hope you get the same. I have, that's good news. And then pause. Remember my tip. What do you expect the mean to be? Well, my smallest is 10 and my biggest is 49. So if my answer isn't between 10 and 49, the chances are it's wrong. So I've got 1,515 and I'm going to divide it by, not by the number of rows, but the total number of people. So let's add these up. I've got 2 plus 18 plus 29 plus 1, and that's going to be equal to 50. It tends to be a nice number of people in exams. 1,515. 1515 divided by those 50 people, and that's come out to be something nasty, 303 over 10, but if I press my SD button, that comes to 30.3. That looks about right, and I've just got to remember that that's pounds, so let's stick a little 0 on the end there. And I reckon that's getting me 4 marks. But before I get all cocky, I'll then turn the page and I see this question here. Now we've got a histogram, but it's not just any old histogram because we haven't got any axes going on the frequency density vertical axis. So we've got to get this sorted out. Morgan has arranged a charity run to raise some money. She's drawn the histogram to show the distribution of money. But flipping Morgan, to be a pain, has forgotten to write the scale on the vertical axis. But for some reason, she has remembered that 16 people raised £30 or less. I mean, I've no idea how she's drawn this histogram without remembering the scale. But anyway, let's move on from that. So 16 people raised 30 or less. Now, you've got to remember one thing about histograms here, that the area of the bars is equal to the frequency. That's very important. So the area of the bars is equal to the frequency or the number of people in that group. So Morgan remembers that 16 people raised less than £30. So the area of that group and the area of that group must be equal to 16 in total. Now, what's nice about this is we've got some squares, and I'm a big fan of counting squares to get a sense of the size of the area, because otherwise we're going to end up doing something complicated because we don't know how high this is. We don't know what this scale is. So let me count the squares. I've got here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I've got 16 squares there, and if I count these, well, I've got 4 there, 8, 12, 16, and I've got 16 squares there. So that tells me if the area is equal to the frequency, those two areas are exactly the same, and if I've got a total of 16 in both of those, then I must have 8 people in this group and 8 people in that group. Well, that's really helpful for me now, because I can now get my scale on the y-axis, and I'm going to take this rectangle here to help me get it. I've got a base of 10, a width of 10 going across there from 20 to 30. So let's draw that out. I've got a width of 10 there. I know my area is 8, and the only thing I'm lacking is my height. So 10 times by something has got to give me 8. Well, I think the only number that works for that is 0.8. So that tells me that the height of that must be 0.8. Well, now I'm laughing because I've got my scale. If I know that's 0.8 and that's 1, 2, 3, 4 things up, then I know that every square must be 0.2. So that height must be 0.4. And the good news there is I can double check that, because that rectangle here has got a width of 20 and a height of 0.4. And I think if you do 20 lots of 0.4, you end up with 8, which is how many should be in that group. So that's really good news. So let's sketch out the rest of my scale. 0.4, 0.8, miss 1, 1.2, miss 1, 1.6, miss 1, 2, miss 1, 2.4, and miss 1, 2.8, and I think that's going to get everything we need. So calculate an estimate of the total money raised. Now we've got to be very, very careful how we do this, because this is a really, really tricky question. Let's work out first how many people are in each group, and then we'll worry about what we're going to do in a bit after we've got that sorted. So I'm going to keep a record of these here. So in the 0 to £20, I'm just going to put money there. In the 0 to £20 group, we know we've got 8 people, because we've just worked that out there. In the 20 to £30 group, we've also got 8 people. I'm being a bit lazy with my inequalities here, but it's not going to matter too much. Now, what about this? In the 30 to 35 group, so we've got 30 to 35, and we've got a height up here of, that seems to go just above the 2, so a 2.2. So we've got a rectangle there that's got a base of 5, and it's got a height of 2.2. Well, if I want to work out how many people are in that group, I'm going to need the area of that. So I'm going to need to do 2.2 times by my 5. That's a little bit tricky, but I think that's the same as doing 1.1 times by 10. So I think that's going to come to 11. So that tells me that there's 11 people in that group. What about this one next to it? The 35 to 40 group. Well, that as well is another rectangle. Again, it's got a width of 5, and this time this seems to go all the way up to 2.4. So its area is the number of people in it. 5 lots of 2.4, I think, comes out to be 12. This is a flipping hard question, this one. Now let's have a look at this one. I've got the 40 to 45 group. So let's take them. Let's get these written down here. 40 to 45 group. That again's got a base of 5, and it's got a height of between 1.6 and 2. So I think that's got a height of 1.8. 5 lots of 1.8 are going to be 9, so that's got 9 people in it. And then, just when we think we've finished, we've got this little group down here. So he's a little rectangle there. He's got a width of 5, and he's got a height of just 1 square, which is 0.2. 5 lots of 0.2 are going to be equal to 1. Excuse me, and that is your 45 to 50 group. Now that's all well and good, and we've probably got ourselves loads of marks there. But we want to calculate an estimate for the total amount of money raised. Well, how are we going to do this? Because we've got 8 people, and we know that they raised between £0 and £20, but we've no idea how much they raised. And we've got another 8 people who raised between £20 and £30, but again, I've no idea how much they raised. So I'm going to have to do something similar to what I do when I do a group averages. I'm going to need a midpoint, because the only thing I can do is take a best guess at what they raise. So I'm going to say those 8 people, they raised between 0 and 20. I'm going to assume each of them raised £10 in the middle. Likewise, these people who raised between 20 and 30, I'm going to assume each of them raised 25 quid. These people between 30 and 35, I'm going to assume they raised £32 and 50 pence, slap bang in the middle. 35 and 40, £37.50. 40 and 45, £42.50. 45 and 50, £47.50. And then I'm going to need my totals, because I want to get a good feel for how much they raise. So those 8 people, on average, I'm going to assume they raise £10 each. So if I do 8 lots of 10, I think that gives me a total of 80 quid for them. These next people, 8 lots of 25, that's going to give me £200, I reckon they raised. This is a nasty one, so definitely a calculator job for this. 11 lots of £32.50, that's going to give me £357.50, I reckon they raised. And bear in mind, this is just an estimate because I'm using midpoints. 12 times 37.5, that's going to give me £450. £42.50 times by me 9 is going to give me £382.50. And finally, one little lot of £47.50. So if I want an estimate of the total amount of money raised, I'm going to need the grand total of all these. And for that, I'm just going to bang it in my calculator very slowly so I don't drop a mark. 80 plus my 200 plus my £357.50 plus my 450 plus my £382.50 plus my £47.50. In total, that's going to give me, flipping heck, £1,517.50. But again, I'm going to use my tip. I'm just going to bang them in again just to double check. And this time, just for a laugh, I'm going to start at the bottom. £47.50 plus £382.50 plus £450 plus £357.50 plus 200 plus 80. Do I get the same answer? I better add £1,517.15. That is hard work for 6 marks. You've got to be good at your histograms. You've got to be good at completing histograms. Then you've got to switch on and think, how can you get information from a histogram to a table? And that's going to enable you to calculate an estimate. Hard question, but if you get it right, 6 marks in the bag.